Good morning. Oh, no, it's not morning for me. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Marvette Lacy. I help doctoral students finish their dissertations in 12 months or less. So you could be done with this thing, move on, and everybody can be calling you doctor. If you're watching a replay, go ahead and put hashtag replay in the comments. I've been appreciating y'all for doing that. It's been great. Today, I want to talk to you about how to execute your dissertation goals. Now, if you are new to me, I just want you to hold on to your edges because I'm feeling it today, especially after last night. And you know, if you have been watching this boat footage, maybe you hype like I'm hype, but you know, people just sometimes gotta fuck around and find out. Okay, but let me stay on track here. First, let me start by saying I have helped over 50 people at this point become doctor. I've been doing this since I was a student myself. I started this in 2016, helping people understand qualitative research, helping them to write. And this is my jam, y'all. This is my superpower. All I need, and listen, I'm going to toot my own horn. I just need like a 10 or 15 minute conversation with you. And I promise you, your whole process will be different. But I get that not everybody wants to talk to me one-on-one. So we're going to do this on live. I hope you have your notebooks and your pens ready, because I'm going to give you some information. I'm going to give you the same information I give clients that I work with every week. It is going to be simple. You are going to say to yourself that, oh, it's too simple. That's not going to work for me. My problems are too complicated. And I'm going to tell you that if you're not doing these 3 things that I'm going to teach you, then you're not a special snowflake, friend. That is really coming down to 3 things. But before I tell you those 3 things, I'm going to tell you probably why you think you're so frustrated or like this isn't working. You might be ready to call it quits when it comes to this dissertation, get you enrolled in another semester. So let's do this. Number 1, a lot of you think you need motivation to execute your dissertation goals. A lot of you think that like if you had more motivation, if you were inspired, if you could just hear that perfect thing, if you can go watch this perfect video, that it will make all the difference. That if you have motivation, you would put words on a page every day. If you have motivation, maybe your emotion is not motivation, because motivation is an emotion. But maybe your emotion is not motivation. Maybe your emotion is confidence. You feel like you lack confidence, right? You might say, oh, it's imposter syndrome. That's the reason why I just second guess every time I go to write words on a page, or my chair or somebody else in your program told you you were an awful writer, and so now you like, I don't have the confidence. It's been shot down, and you have been looking outside of you to try to find the motivation and the confidence to put words on a page. Right? Listen, I'm only telling you what I did as a student, y'all. I would go and look for the best motivational videos because I was like, this is the reason why I'm gonna get pumped up to write. Like I used to listen to Eric Thomas every day on repeat, never failed. Every time I went to go write, because I was like, he's going to give me the inspiration and motivation to write. But listen, y'all, even after hours of watching those videos, I did not feel any more like writing than I did when I first started. The only difference is like hours had passed and I was sitting in the same spot with no words on the page. It is not motivation. Motivation is a lie. It is a lie told to you by I don't know who, but it's a lie. If you go ask your favorite academic top people who write day in and day out, do they feel motivated to write? They're going to tell you no. They're going to tell you that most days they do not feel like writing. Most days they do not have the motivation to write. And they may say something like, well, I just forced myself to just show up anyway. And you're like, well, I don't know how to do that. And it's because you keep thinking that you have to feel a certain way in order to write. Like you think that you have to have all the like inspiration and the confidence and the motivation. Like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it. And then you'll be able to write. And for some reason, a lot of people think, oh, once I become doctor and I graduate and I'm on that stage and my mom and them there and they giving me the hood and whatnot and I have the party, that then I'm going to be so confident that anytime I need to show up and write, I'm going to be able to write. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true, because you can go ask your chair, you can go ask anybody that you know who is finished, and especially if they're still actively writing and publishing, they will tell you they don't ever feel like it. Every once in the blue moon, they may feel like it, But most day in and day out, every week, they do not feel like it. It is because they have established a writing practice. When I'm using the word practice, you can substitute that for a habit or a routine. It is because they are someone who is like, it doesn't matter if I feel like it, it's just something that I do. It's just a part of who I am. In the same way that a lot of people don't have to think about it, which I don't know who these people are because I have to think about this every morning. But in the same way that people wake up and they go brush their teeth, it's just a habit. It's just what they do. Writing needs to be the same way. In the same way, I don't know, you stop at Starbucks and you get your favorite drink and you know all the changes. It's like, you know, I want oat milk and sub this and extra hot shots and make sure, like the way you know all it's a habit. You don't even have to think about when you give your favorite order at Starbucks or your favorite order at, I don't know, Chipotle. Where do people go? I just mostly go to Starbucks, right? But you have an order or Chick-fil-A, I don't know. Whatever your place is, you don't even have to think about it because it's just a habit. I want you to think about writing in the same way. What if you treated writing as a habit, as something that just is a practice, but what that requires is a routine. But I'll tell you how to have one in a minute. But let me pause and look at this comment. Some folks listen to ET. I'm ready for daily dose of Dr. Lacy telling me to write a shitty paragraph. Come on. Yes, listen, Danielle, listen. ET, I get it. He ain't for everybody. He be yelling. He be doing a lot. I get it. But I appreciate you, because if you don't think I yell too much, that just gives me all the good juju. So I appreciate you. But yes, so number one is motivation. Motivation is the number one lie you're probably telling yourself that you need. Number two, the thing that's probably holding you back from executing your dissertation goals is you're overwhelmed with the process. You might be like, okay, forget it. I don't need to be motivated. I'm with you. I want to have a routine, but I'm just overwhelmed. Like, I don't even know where to start, especially if you're in the literature review. You're like, where do I start? Where do I start? And as a side note, if you're watching this and you need help with your literature review, your writing routine, I want you to go to the link in my bio, hit that, and sign up for the Institute. The Institute is a monthly membership. It is where I'm going to give you the structure and the support you need to write your dissertation in 10 hours or less a week. You can do that. It's half off, y'all, because you can ask the people joining December. It's half off. I'm doing that because I want to help y'all. But you may be overwhelmed, especially with the literature review, especially with the proposal, because you're like, there's so many moving parts. Like, I got to read all these things, and then people are telling me to write these chapters, but I don't really know what goes into these chapters. I don't know how long they're supposed to be. I don't know if I know enough. I don't know if this topic is good enough. That is a lot. And the biggest thing that's probably holding you back is you think that, oh, I should be able to sit down and write this proposal or this literature review or this chapter in one go. That I should magically be able to read all of this information, sit down and write it and never have to come back to it. You're not overwhelmed because there's so many moving parts, because listen, you got multiple degrees. You went to high school, you got an undergrad degree, most of y'all got masters, and then you're in a whole doctoral program. You know how to manage different things. You know how to be in multiple classes with multiple writing assignments and different topics and subjects. You're not overwhelmed by all the pieces of the dissertation. It's new. Yes, it's new. You've never done it before. But really, the reason why it feels so overwhelming, or so like people say, oh, it just feels like this heavy weight on my chest or on my back. The reason why is really, number one, you're putting a lot of weight on it. You're like, this is going to make or break my career. Like, when I become doctor, it's going to come with all these responsibilities and all this pressure. The only thing that's going to come with you being doctor is that you're going to have a title. You're going to have some extra words to put on applications. You're going to have extra letters to put in your email signature. Just because you become doctor doesn't change anything but your title. You decide if it has all these pressures that are associated with it. You decide that it means something way more than what it means. Now, I'm not trying to talk shit about being doctor. Only 2 to 3% of people do that. I'm not trying to say it's not a big deal. I'm saying that it doesn't have to come with the pressures of, I gotta be all knowing, that I have to have every answer to any question that everyone ever even thinks to ask me, that I have to walk a certain way into a room, that I have to be like publishing all these things. That doesn't necessarily come with you being a doctor. Being a doctor just means you have the title. And if that's the case for when you're finishing, could that also be the case for in the middle of the process of you being doctor? Could it be simple to write a dissertation? Could it just be as simple as 5 separate papers that you put together and called a dissertation? Could you think about it in the same way of, how I had to write 5 papers for class? I'm just doing that for the dissertation. But you will have to find a place in a way to talk about the pressure that you're feeling. Because another thing that's happening is you're realizing that in a very short amount of time, you will no longer be a student. That you will have to figure out who you are when you're no longer in school. A lot of people don't want to do that work because they love being a student. And I love being a student, y'all. I love school. Like, I cried. I had a whole fit at 3 years old because I was too young to go to school. Like, I love being in school. But what happens when you get the highest degree possible? Ain't no more school. I mean, you can go to another doctoral program. Y'all love to go get certifications because you love being a student. Not knowing who you're going to be when you're no longer in somebody's classroom is really holding you back. You just mistakenly think it's the dissertation that's overwhelming. No, it's what happens when I'm done. Most people freak out when they're coming to an end of a huge goal. Becoming a doctor for you is probably a dream, a life dream, a huge goal for your family. A lot of you are the first ones in your family to become doctor. And the closer you get to the end of that, the more that you will start to freak out, because who will you be when you're no longer a student? You're not overwhelmed because the dissertation is so much. You're overwhelmed because you don't know what's going to happen afterwards, and you feel all this pressure to know answers that you don't know. You thought you would be clearer on those answers by the time you got to this process. By the time you got to the dissertation, you thought like you would know exactly what you wanted to do. You would feel 1,000% confident, and everything would be good. Everything would be figured out. But as you get close to the end, the more you realize like none of that is true. I still got things to figure out. So that's the number 2 thing that I find that why people can't execute on their goals. And number 3, you are ignoring your chair. Tell me, y'all, make this make sense for me. How are you supposed to progress forward in your dissertation process if you are not talking to your chair? If you are sending your drafts to everybody else except your chair, how is that supposed to help you move forward? I know a lot of you have great intentions because you're like, well, I can't just turn any old thing into my chair because you don't know my chair. Like, they've been doing this for a long time, or they're a beast in this or whatnot. And so you try to send it to your homegirl, right? You try to send it to your mentor who works at a different school. You try to send it to a cohort member, and you want all these people to look at it and give you feedback in preparation to giving it to your chair. But what you're not being honest about is that it took you 3 months to give it to your homegirl. It took you another 6 months to give it to that faculty person in another program. And you didn't even open up the feedback from your cohort member. So all this time is going by and you haven't sent it to your chair. And so your chair is like, what's going on? They're probably reaching out to you. They're probably giving you the like side glances, like, well, I'm still waiting on writing. You like, yeah. I'm just like finishing up some details. I'm going to send it to you. You are coming from a place that you want to be respectful. But what it looks like and where you're forcing your chair, the conclusion you're forcing them to come to is that you're not writing, that you're not doing anything, that you're avoiding and you're hiding. Because you haven't communicated with them. You haven't given your drafts to them. And some real talk, it doesn't matter what your friends say, that faculty over there say, that mentor says, that cohort members say. It don't matter what none of these people say. The only opinion that matters is your chair. Why? Because that is the signature that is going on the paperwork, that's going to the graduate school that says, yes, this degree is ready to be conferred. You avoiding your chair, it's just more time. It's being added to the clock. And I get you may be like, well, you don't know my chair. They're not helpful. It's not like they give me good feedback anyway. That's not the point. The point is you need to be able to communicate with them on a consistent basis so that they know you're doing your work. So they know that you have a plan. So that they know that you're serious about this thing. Most faculty, They already know. They like come in and they have this assumption of I'm not going to even take the graduate student or the doctoral student seriously probably for a good year, because on average, the average doc student takes about a year before they get seriously about writing. Because you got to do all this like, well, I downloaded some articles and I've been reading them and I think this should be my topic, or maybe that should be my topic, or I'm thinking about this should be my topic. You don't do that a good year before you like, let me go put some words on a page and let me buckle down and get this thing done. I'm not, no shade, I'm just telling y'all. And so your chair doesn't think to give you to like, why would they spend their good time and energy giving you detailed feedback for you not to look at, and then for you to, when you do look at it, you ignore it, and then for you to come back 3 weeks later talking about you change your topic. I'm not saying every student does that, but for the most part, that's how your chair is coming into the situation. They take their lead from you. So if you coming in all like wish-washy, like, I don't know, they're going to be like, okay, well, keep reading. Keep writing. Just keep going. That's the feedback that you're going to get. But it doesn't matter what their opinion is or what they think you are capable of. It matters what you think about you. It matters if you're like, no, 12 months or less, I'm doing this. 12 months or less, I'm in and out. It doesn't matter if your chair says, well, you can't even think about defending your entire dissertation for 2 years. Let them have their opinion. Your job is to believe like, this is what I'm going to do. I believe I can do it and I'm going to work towards it. And I'm going to meet with my chair every month and I'm going to get what I need. I need y'all to have that attitude. You come and get what you need. So let me recap. The 3 probably main reasons as to why you're not executing on your dissertation goals is, number 1, you think you need motivation, and motivation is a lie. Number 2, you think you're overwhelmed with the process when really you don't know what comes next after being a student. And then number 3, you are ignoring your chair. You're not meeting with them. So then you're like, what do I do? What I tell students in the institute, anytime they're working with me, I tell them to follow 3 rules. I don't care what other hacks or workshops or whatnot that you've gone through. If you can follow these 3 rules, you will make more progress faster. Number 1, follow what is called the Scholar Basics every day. In our program, we have 5 things that we strive to do each and every day. It's not about being perfect with these things. It is about having a practice, right? Because people say, make sure you take care of yourself, but no one tells you how to take care of yourself. So because I'm literal like that, I'm like, I needed rules on how to take care of myself. And now this is the expectations that I have for clients. The first basic is go find you some water. This is a good time for you to go get some water. Drink 64 ounces of water a day, at least 64 ounces. You being like anxious is probably dehydration. You not being able to focus and brain fog is probably dehydration. You not really being able to sleep and get adequate rest is probably dehydration. You need water. You cannot survive off of caffeine. Listen, if that was possible, I would be doing it. But you can't. Your body needs water. Because, like, to be real, most of y'all not eating. I'm talking to myself too, but you're probably not eating. But if we need water. We can survive without food. You know what we can't survive without? Water. Go drink some water, which is why it's number 1. I don't care how you have it. If you got to start off, if you're someone who's like, I don't like the taste of water, go find you some Kool-Aid, go find you some sweet tea, like something water-based. That still has a lot of sugar, but I'd much rather you be drinking liquids than not. Go get you some water. So that's number 1. Number 2, you need to sleep and or rest at least 7 hours a day. You can't write because you don't have no energy. You think it's motivation, but you probably just don't have no energy. You need energy, you need water, and you need to go lay down somewhere. If I know you, like I think I know you, you're probably doing everything. From the moment your eyes open up, you're like, let me go do this. Like you never stop moving. And if someone was to tell you to go sit down, you would think they told you the worst thing in the world. I had a friend yesterday who I was going to go see. And then she messaged me an hour right before I was about to leave and was like, oh, by the way, I'm at urgent care. I think I got a herniated disc. The doctor told me I had to take 2 days of a break, but I'm only going to take 2 hours of a break because I really need to clean my house. And I was like, I don't know how you got there, girl, but the doctor said it's 2 days. How you get 2 hours? And she was like, because I just can't sit still. I can't sit still. Like, I'm just not made that way. I have to be moving. How many of y'all are like that? Please put a 1 in the comment. If you find yourself saying, I'm just not made that way, I can't just sit around, I gotta be doing something, please put a 1 in a comment, because that's what she was trying to tell me. And only reason why she told me that the doctor said that is because she was trying to make a joke to be like, now I don't know how the doctor talked to Marvette, my friend, about me sitting down somewhere, but clearly y'all are on the same page. And I'm sharing that story with you to say, because you need to go sit down. You can't keep moving all day, every day for a whole week and think that you're going to have the energy that is required to write. Y'all, writing takes a considerable amount of energy. Now, I get it. Sleep don't come easy to everyone. Now, everybody on this thing, y'all mean to tell me y'all can take breaks? Y'all are good with sitting down because ain't nobody put a 1 in this comment, and I'm having a hard time believing that. But if it is, like, I'm with my people. I'll say it that way. Right. But the reason why I'm sharing that story is because people come to me all the time and they're like, I just can't sit down. But then I'm like, you don't have no energy to write. Like, you got to take in a lot of information and be able to put words out on the page. Your brain is working overtime. Your brain will use way more calories than your body ever could. That brain is working. Like, we don't use our brains a lot. And if to its fullest capacity is what I'm saying. But when you start to write and you're creating, that you need energy. So I'm not saying go to sleep, because I know that can be a lot, especially if you have anxiety or what is the other word I'm looking for? Insomnia. But at least go lay down. You know what you can do while you're laying down? You can scroll. You can watch Instagram all you want to. You can scroll the TikToks. I don't care. You can be on Twitter. You can do whatever you want to. Lay down, though. Allow your body some time to rest. It will feel hard at first. It will feel like, I got to do something. I can't just lay here. It will get better over time. When I first started teaching myself how to take breaks, it started out with me being like, on Saturdays, you can't do anything. Like, on Saturdays, I was like, you can't clean the house. You can't do nothing for the dog. Don't even try to disguise, like, oh, let me go check some emails. My only job on Saturday was to learn how to either be on the couch or to go somewhere, like take myself on a date somewhere. Y'all, for the first 2 to 3 months, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I would sit on the couch just staring at my computer or staring at my laptop being like, but I could just check one email. I had to delete the apps off my phone because I was like, but I could just go check this one email, or I could just go write this one little thing. It felt like something was crawling under my skin because it was so hard to take a break. But let me tell you, the more I got into it, the more I got done throughout the week. And I can tell you now, I've been doing this for years at this point. The weeks where I don't get as much done are the weeks that I don't take breaks. Like, let that sink in. The weeks where I don't get as much done are the weeks where I don't take breaks. When I'm just like, oh, let me push through. Oh, it won't be a big deal. It shows back up. Muscles, let me give you this analogy. If y'all go to the gym and you know anything about building muscle, muscles are built in the recovery. It is about how you recover more than it is about the work that you put into the gym, right? So if we go to the gym to get your muscles to grow, you have to go to the gym and you have to lift more weights than you feel like you physically can, because you want to, when you do that, you tear the muscle trying to lift the heavy weights. The muscle tears, you go home, you eat nutrients, you drink water. Those nutrients and water come to the muscle and they repair the muscle. As the muscle is being repaired, it grows bigger. That's how you get a bigger muscle. But the repairing of the muscle does not happen until after you eat, you go lay down and you go to sleep. It is in the sleep process where the body has enough energy and concentration to develop and to repair the muscle to make it bigger. It is not because you went to the gym. The actual lifting of the weight isn't what's building the muscle. It's tearing the muscle. It is when you go to sleep and the body has a chance to repair it is when it grows. I'm using this analogy to say, you think that by trying to knock off as much as your to-do list as possible, you think that's what makes you productive. That's what gives you the energy, or that's how you can get more done by doing more. When really it's when you rest, When you give your body and your brain a chance to recover, to clean up, to organize, like, okay, well, she was reading this or he was doing this, and let me put it in the files or whatnot. It's in the rest and sleep process that then it's like, okay, we're reset. The next day, you have more energy to go get more done. And you're going to be able to get more done in less time because you gave yourself that time to recover, in the same way that now you can go to the gym and lift heavier muscles because you have stronger muscles because you went to sleep and you lay down and you rested. The same is true with work. The people who get the most done, the people that you see on these internet streets or in these academic streets, and you're like, how do they do so much? They go lay down somewhere. Now, some of them are like, hustle, I'll sleep when I die. That may come sooner than they want it to. That is not a long-term strategy that's going to work for everybody. It will show up in your body if you don't allow yourself to rest and sleep. So that's number 2. Number 3, because I stayed there for a while because that's how important it is. So you're going to drink at least 64 ounces of water. You're going to rest at least 7 hours a day. Number 3, you're going to journal or empty your brain out for at least 10 minutes. Now, I know some of y'all don't want to write, and I get it. But you can open up a notes app and record yourself. It is important to record yourself so that you can come back to it. You need to do something physical that empties your brain out. And all I do, where's my little thing? All I do is I take a little notebook I got from Target, and my only job is to put something on each line and fill up a page. I just have to put something. My first line is, I'm feeling so good today. The next one is like, this is so dumb. Number 3 is like, maybe I should have eggs for breakfast. The thoughts that come in my mind, I'm just writing on the paper. I'm not judging those thoughts. I'm not trying to be like, yesterday, let me tell you about my day. No, my only job is to fill up the page with random thoughts. We think something like 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Most of those thoughts are on repeat. We're just thinking the same thing over and over, and most of them are negative. When you have the same negative repeating thought on loop all day long, that is what you're training your brain to focus on. That is what you're training your nervous system to feel like. It's to feel that negativity. It's to feel that anxiety. When you give it an outlet, like writing, like you're physically writing or you're verbalizing, you release it, you acknowledge it, you tell your brain, or you tell your anxiety rather, like, I heard you. Thank you for telling me that. I put it down on a piece of paper. I'll record it. It's proof. I heard you. And it can quiet itself. Now, am I saying this is a 1000% fix for anxiety? No, but I can tell you, as someone who has severe anxiety, that when I am on top of this, it lessens. I have more clarity up here. I can hear things now. I still got like 20 million voices up here, y'all, because it's real. Like one time I got a soundtrack playing. I got a monologue back here. I got a list somewhere, but it's not as intense when I do this. So I just ask people to do this for 10 minutes because what that will do, again, this is all in the effort to give you the energy you need, the capacity you need to show up in the writing process. It is hard to try to figure out, now, what do all these articles say and how do I put it into a paragraph that someone can read? It is hard to do that when you have those thoughts on loop. When you have that same, like, doop, and you didn't write it down or you didn't verbalize it in a note. So for 10 minutes every day, journal. Do some form of journaling. Number 4, do some form of movement, right? It makes no sense to do all this for our bodies, for our minds, if we're not moving. If the emotions have nowhere to go, if the anxiety has nowhere to go, you know what it does? It sits in the body. It starts to fester in the body. And then this is where we get back aches, shoulder aches, right? This is how down the line people start to get illnesses because the stress was just sitting in your body. I'm not asking you to go be a marathon or Olympic track runner. I'm asking you to do some stretching. I'm asking you to go take a walk. You can go to the mailbox. You can go around the corner. I'm asking you to turn on a free yoga video on the YouTubes and do that. Do some stretching. Turn on some music and just move around. Walk your dog. Do something. Move the body. At least for 10 minutes every day. It will help you. I love combining walking and my journaling. So a lot of times I'll go outside and I'm just walking and talking out loud. Now, are there people who are walking past me and like, why is she doing that? Yeah, but that's I don't care about what they're doing. That's my business. There is I call it like a walking meditation. I am emptying out my brain, plus I'm moving at the same time. And it's about being outside and seeing the greenery that calms me down. And you know what happens when I'm calm? I'm in a much better headspace to go write. I write something on average like 50 to 100 pages a week. Between emails, because if you're on any of my email lists, you're getting emails. Between emails, content for clients, y'all, I am writing. I'm also on research teams. I'm writing. I'm reading. But without these scholar basics, it would not be possible. So move your body. And the last scholar basic is go write a shitty paragraph. Was it Danielle who was just saying writing your paragraph every day? Write your shitty paragraph. A shitty paragraph is, I open up a Google document and I'm like, okay, if my topic is about Black women identity development, where are 4 sentences I could say about Black women's identity development? And then I just write them. Again, I'm not judging the words. I am not saying, is there a citation? Nope. My only job is to make 4 shitty sentences and call it a paragraph and go about my business. That's it. So let me recap. The scholar basics is drinking at least 64 ounces of water, resting or sleeping at least 7 hours a night, journaling for 10 minutes, moving your body for 10 minutes, and writing a shitty paragraph. If you can do those 5 things just alone, you will feel so much better. Like physically, mentally, emotionally, you would feel so much better. And when you feel better, you're more likely to show up and write. And because you've already done writing for the day, you're like, I mean, I could stop. I did some writing, or I could keep going because it feels good. You think you need motivation and inspiration because you think it's going to help you to feel good, but you can go watch a video and maybe you're inspired for 2 seconds and then that goes away. What happens when you're taking care of yourself every day and you just naturally feel better? You are more likely to want to write. You are more likely going to wake up. You're not going to snooze the alarm clock, or you're going to come home from work and you're going to sit down at your computer and you're more likely to put words on the page. So number 1, you have to follow the scholar basics. That is what I teach folks in the program. Number 2, that's right, Danielle, no editing or writing at the same time. They are different activities. Different activities. They don't even like each other. Think of them as frenemies. They don't want to be done at the same time. They want you to separate them. Okay, so thank you. So number 1, how you execute your dissertation goals, you have to take care of yourself. How do you take care of yourself? You follow the scholar basics. Number 2, you need to make a plan every week. Now you might be thinking, I'm a great planner. Look at all my notebooks. Look at all my planners. I even got stickers for them. It's great. Or maybe you're a person who has a massive to-do list and you're like, I just check things off. No problem. My question for you is, how many activities on that to-do list has, number 1, anything to do with your dissertation? But number 2, how often do you get things done related to your dissertation or your academic writing? Or do you push them off to the end when you say, oh, I have more time, or I have more energy tonight, or I'll do that on the weekend. And then tonight comes or the weekend comes and then you say, man, I really want to go outside, or they doing this cookout over here. I don't really got the energy. I'm so tired. And then those tasks never get done. I'm not interested in you just making another to-do list. Period. Next, most of you are trying to do too much in a week's time or a day's time. Most of you, when you do go to sit down and plan, because if you like me, you got all the markers, you got all the stickers. Now my new thing is to go into Google Sheets and do color code and like make it look real cute. When I'm doing that now, I'm like, girl, you just know this is a creative exercise because that's not going to do nothing. A plan, the way I teach, making a plan is that you focus on 3 things. 1, 2, 3. 3 things a week. Each of those 3 things should take you 2 hours or less to complete. I do a lot of things around time limits because I find that it's more helpful for in the moment than other things. If you don't like time, find another way, but this is what I'm teaching you. And you might be saying, well, how do I know if it takes me 2 hours? You're going to do a lot of guessing in the beginning. But the reason why I'm giving you a 2-hour time limit is because I want you to practice constraint. Most of you are going to say things like, well, I'm going to write a whole section of my literature review on Saturday morning. How? How are you going to do that? Because you're going to sit down on Saturday morning and you're going to like, oh, I got to get myself in the mood. Oh, let me go read what I wrote last time. And then you start like, oh, there's an article I want to go read. So then you go find that article. And then that article leads you to different citations. Now you got to go to the library website and you got to find those 3 articles. But then you realize that your library doesn't have it in the full text. So now you got to go request it. And so that's a different part of the website. So then you go request those articles. But then those articles make you think about a paper that you wrote in that one class during your first year, and now you got to go through your folders in your storage to go find that paper, and 3 hours have passed by and you haven't written anything for that literature review section that you said you were going to do on Saturday morning. Y'all see how this like snowballs? When I say do 3 things, so you're going to focus on 3 things that take you 2 hours or less, that requires you then to say clearly, this is what I will produce in these 2 hours. Things that are tangible and that you can produce is like, I will write 2 shitty pages, or I will read 1 article and write 1 shitty paragraph, or I will email my chair to schedule a meeting for next week, or I'm going to empty my email inbox. What is it that you can tangibly say I'm going to do in these 2 hours? Stop saying things like, I'm going to work on my literature review. I'm going to work on my proposal. Your brain does not know what that means. Because you might know what it means on a Sunday when you're making this plan or this to-do list. But let's get to Thursday night after you had a long week. The people that got on your nerves. You tired. You don't even know why you're in school anymore. And then it's 7 p.m. on a Thursday night at the end of the week. And you go to sit down and you're like, what did I say? I'm going to work on a literature review. Where do I start? And that is how you get into the cycle level. Let me read over my notes. Let me go look at what I did last time. And 3 hours passed. Now it's 10 p.m. on a Thursday night. And you probably got to get up for Friday morning to go to work. And you like, I got to go to sleep. I can't just do this. It's already been 3 hours. Be very clear about what it is that you're going to do. So an example would be for this upcoming week, you can say, I'm going to find 10 articles. And I'm going to write the full citations of those articles. That's going to be my first 2-hour period. My second task is going to be, I'm going to read 2 of those articles and write 2 shitty paragraphs. And my third task is I'm going to read another 2 articles and write 2 shitty paragraphs. And that is all I'm going to do for the week. The reason why I say only do 3 things is because you don't have the time, the attention, or the energy that you think you do in a week's time. We greatly overestimate what we can do in a week because you're not really aware of your energy. You don't realize just how much you are people pleasing. I'm about to step on somebody's toes right now. You don't realize that how much of your day goes to serving other people. You don't realize how much, if somebody calls you planning to do your dissertation writing right now, say on the Monday is 1:00 my time. Say you blocked off 1 to 3 p.m. to work on your dissertation, and then your friend calls you and is like, oh, I want to go to Trader Joe's because I heard they have this new snack and I want to get it. And you're like, yeah, Trader Joe's sounds better. Let me go do that. You don't realize how much you do that in a week's time. You don't know how much you realize, like, when every time your phone dings and a message comes in or an email comes in, you stop what you're doing to go look at that message or to return that phone call or to look at those emails. You don't realize how much you're doing that. And so you think like, well, I got all this time available to work on my dissertation. Why am I not doing it? I just need to get myself together. When really what's happening is you need to say no to people. And you need to be very clear about what it is that you're going to do. Stop saying things like, I'm just going to work on this. What are the 3 things that you can commit to? Get out your business. I'm in my business suit, right? What are the 3 things that you can commit to doing? Every Sunday, so last night, Gabby, who's on the team, who's also a client, was leading our planning and writing call every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. We meet as a group. And we go through our weekly plan. The first thing that you do is you evaluate the past 7 days. Because I didn't even get to that. In my rant. You might be making to-do lists. You might be making realistic plans, but are you evaluating how well that plan is working for you? Some guru could have told you that this is the master way to plan, but does it work for you? And are you spending more time talking shit to yourself, beating yourself up because you're not doing it like everybody else is doing it? You need to know how you plan your week, how you show up to writing, is that working for you? So that's what we do. We spend the first 7 days, we spend the first 10 minutes or so asking what went well for those first 7 days? What do we need to change? What can we celebrate? Celebrating our wins. After we evaluate, then we take another 10 to 15 minutes and we make a plan. It starts off with, what are the 3 things? What are the top 3 tasks you're committing to doing? These tasks should take you 2 hours or less to complete. Right? It could be, I'm going to schedule a meeting with my chair. I am going to find 10 articles and write out their citations. And I'm going to read 2 articles and write 2 shitty paragraphs. That's really clear. That is what I'm committing to doing. Come hell or high water, that's what I'm committing to doing for this week. After you identify, after you identify what those 3 things are, then you want to find you 3 days. 3 separate days. 3 separate days where you're going to block off 2 hours each of those days. The reason why you're not going to do this all in one day, you can. If that works for you, it works for you. But the reason why I'm saying block off 3 days, because what did I just say? You're doing anything for everybody else. And I don't think that you're going to stop being a people pleaser overnight. I don't think that you're going to magically be able to go to work and tell those people, no, I'm not doing that extra work. Those people got you working 3 or 4 jobs and calling it one job and being like, you should be so blessed. You're getting so much experience. I don't think you're going to be able to cuss them out overnight. I don't think you're going to be able to tell them, no, that's some work that we have to do. And so in the meantime, you're going to block off 3 days, 2 hours each day. It could look something like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. is my working time. Like maybe you're going to go to the office early and so you can have an interrupted time, or maybe you're going to stay after hours. Now, unless you work at a different place where people leave you alone, that can work. But if you, like me, who was working around college students who really don't care about what you got going on, they just want to sit in your office and eat your candy, then you might want to get to work early. If you're an educator, shout out to y'all, because kids will just be like taking all your thing. They're like, you don't got no work to do. I can sit in your office all day long, right? But maybe you want to get to work early, or maybe you're a full-time student and you're trying to figure out how to structure your days. Maybe for you, it's a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning situation, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It don't have to be early. It don't have to be late. It's like what works best for you. And when you're thinking about your time, I want you to be honest with yourself. Don't try to be like, oh, this is a week I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. and you don't wake up at 5 a.m. If that's not something you naturally are doing right now, don't combine goals. We're not doing that. What time of days, which days do you have the most energy, and that it would be easy for you to go to your computer or your laptop and turn it on? Don't be coming over here talking about Monday morning at 5 a.m. because I've been wanting to have this goal of waking up at 5 a.m. No, that's something we're going to do that later. Do it later. You're not that person yet. Do that later. But if you know that you someone I have a friend who loves writing and working at 1 or 2 a.m. If that's your jam, then let that be your jam. It does not matter if people tell you should wake up at 5 a.m. If your golden time for getting work done is 1 a.m., then block off 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. I want you to decide ahead of time when those 3 days are going to be. Do not try to wing it, because when you try to wing it, something else is going to fill that slot. So 3 tasks in 3 days, 2 hours each day. And you're going to put that on your calendar. So I really want you to go to your Google Calendar, your iCal, your whatever calendar you use. And I want you to block it off. So if it's Monday, 9 a.m., block it off. But when you block it off, put the task in the calendar, right? So if you're going to schedule a meeting with your chair on Monday at 9 a.m., make it a calendar appointment, because most of you will follow your calendar, especially if it's giving you an alert. Most of you will follow it. When you try to wing it, that's when we get lost. So, first rule of executing your goals is to follow the scholar basics. The second rule is to evaluate and create a plan every 7 days. And I just told you how to do that. 3 tasks, 3 days, 2 hours each day. And when you go to make your next plan, you're going to evaluate, did that work for me? Did those 3 things that I said I was going to do, did I get them done? What worked for me to get them done? What didn't work for me? Maybe you overestimated or underestimated how long it was going to take you to do one of those tasks. And you're like, okay, great. This is not a time to shit on yourself. It's like for next week. Now I know. And you're going to update your plan for the next 7 days. Watch out for this won't be enough. I won't move fast enough if I'm only focusing on 3 things. You're not moving fast right now. You're not doing anything right now. Most of you watching this are not doing anything right now because you're overwhelmed and you're confused and you're stuck and you don't know how to get started and there's so many moving parts and you keep setting yourself up. You keep going through this cycle where you say, oh, I'm going to block off a whole weekend and I'm going to write all this stuff. Only for the weekend to get here and you don't do anything because you're tired. Because you keep setting yourself up for failure by trying to do everything. But when instead you say, I'm going to do these 3 small tasks and that's all I'm going to do for the week. If I have enough time and energy left over, then I'll do something else. But for this week, I'm going to commit to doing these 3 things. And what happens is when you get to the next Sunday and you realize you did those 3 things, you feel so good about yourself. You're like, look at me doing what I said I was going to do. Look at me just getting things done. When you have that continues to build. And that's momentum that builds for the next 7 days. It's like, what else could I get done? You are going to start off with 3 things. But give me 2 or 3 months of following this process. You're going to be like, how did I finish a whole proposal in record time? How did I finish? This is how I get students. People ask me, I think like a couple of weeks ago, I said about Tiffany, how she finished from start to finish her dissertation in 6 months. And somebody came to me and they were like, what do you mean she finished in 6 months? Like she just finished data collection on 4 in 6 months? I said, no, she finished the whole thing. When I coached her, it was late October, I believe. And she had about 2 or 3 pages of her literature review. That's where she was starting from. And I said, why are you playing games? Why are you playing? What would be required for you to finish this proposal before Thanksgiving was what I asked her. I said, before Thanksgiving came, it was Halloween, I think. And I said, before Thanksgiving, who would you have to be to finish the proposal? And she tried to give me the standard answer of like, I would have to be disciplined. I would have to be consistent. I said, what does that look like? If I had a camera in your house, and this is for everyone, if I have a camera in your house, what would it look like if you were being consistent and disciplined? And she said, well, I would follow the rules. I would follow the Scholar Basics. I would be making my plan. I'd be writing shitty paragraphs. And I was like, yes. So why don't you do that? Why don't you just commit to doing that for 3 weeks? 3 weeks went by. She had a whole proposal. And I was like, me and your chair on the same page. The chair was like, bet, run it, we gonna defend it. So she defended the proposal before the academic year ended. So now she was going into winter break with a defended proposal and she was working on her IRB application. IRB came back early January. It was like, you're good to go. And I was like, all right, again, who do you have to be to finish data collection in the next, before February gets here? She said, I'm just going to keep following the plan. Scholar Basics, doing my plan every 7 days, talking to my chair. Great. So she did that. She finished her data collection before February got here. And so now it's like, all right, all that's standing between you and a defense state is you writing chapters 4 and 5. Who do you have to be? And she was like, don't say less. We didn't even have to meet. And she was done with her dissertation. What was it? Late March, early April. They were going back and forth with edits. Then she scheduled her defense date. I'm not saying everybody needs to do this in 6 months. I'm just explaining to you that when you have a simple routine like these 3 rules I'm telling you, it takes out the drama. You are less likely to be like, oh, this is not moving fast enough when you actually follow the process and you see how fast you're moving. So, rule number 1 is follow the Scholar Basics. Rule number 2 is to make your plan and evaluate your plan. Rule number 3 is to meet with your chair at least once a month. Now, I was going off on a rant about this earlier. You have to stop ignoring your chair. Your chair is the only signature and approval that matters. It doesn't matter what committee member so-and-so says. It doesn't matter what your mentor at another school says. It matters what the chair says. The chair is the one whose opinion matters. The chair is the one that the committee takes their cue from. And your chair is looking to you to know how you move forward, right? Everybody else is looking at your chair is looking at you. If you're not meeting with them, how are they supposed to know how you want them to show up for you? If you're not clearly saying, hey, this is this draft I was working on. It's a little shitty. It ain't meant to be perfect. What I want you to do is look at it and tell me if I'm missing any key literature. What I want you to do is look at it and say, like, in general, is it going in the direction of your expectations? Can you look at this and make sure I'm doing APA correctly? Do you hear how I'm saying this? Stop just asking for feedback and be like, can you just look at this? What do you want them to look at? What type of feedback do you want them to provide to you? Most of you are saying that your chair is not giving you good feedback when you're not being clear about the feedback that you need. What exactly is it that you want them to do? Most of you just want to know, is this good enough for me to defend? Is this good enough for me to move on to the next chapter? Then ask them that. Be clear. Ask them, hey, can you look this over and tell me what is it that I would need to add to this to make it to a point where you would be comfortable with me scheduling my defense, or you would be comfortable with me moving on to the next part. Be direct and clear in your ask. Your chair is a person like anyone else. I get that you're like, but they have so much power and authority and they've done all these amazing things, but that's not fair to them. You're judging them based on their accomplishments and you're forgetting that they're a person. Some chairs are rude, okay? I'm not going to say they're not rude, but them especially is when you want to be like, hey, I'm going to turn this draft into you. If you could just look at it and make sure you give me feedback on the content, the structure, the organization, and that'd be great. And if you can tell me when I can expect that back from you so I can make sure I follow up with you. Oh, you're going to take you 2 weeks to read over it? No problem. I'll just follow up with you in 2 weeks. When 2 weeks come, and you didn't get that feedback, you say, hey, I'm just following up. I want to see, where we are in the feedback, or if there's anything I can do to help you. Another day goes by. Hey, just following up again. And you keep following up until they give you a response. Yes, you may be thinking like, that's annoying, or I don't want to bother them. Your chair has a life. Your chair is a whole person. Because I think y'all forget this. They're a whole person. You are not their only advisee, most likely. You are not their only responsibility. They are not sitting around with bated breath being like, oh, I just wonder when so-and-so is going to send me their draft. They're not. They got their own research projects. They got their own imposter syndrome to deal with. They got their own family problems and relationship problems and kids. They got to teach 50 million classes. They got to grade papers. They got to give other people feedback. They're not waiting around for you. And if you are going to be a person who's like, well, I asked them to look over this for me and they didn't give it back, so they don't care. Or I asked them to look over this for me and it's been a whole 3 days since they got back to me. The world does not revolve around you. They got whole things to do. And if we're going to really be honest about it, they don't even get paid to advise you. Like if you go look at their contracts, most of the time they're not even getting paid to advise you. They don't get anything, like they don't get any incentive for advising you until you become a whole ass doctor, until you successfully defend your dissertation, and they can put your name on their CV to say they chaired your dissertation. They don't really get any incentive for helping you. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse for people to act shitty. I'm trying to get you to understand why they may not be as motivated. So what you can do is help them to help you. What that means is you meet with them every month. You schedule a meeting. I don't care if you don't have nothing new to discuss. You meet with them. You either meet with them or you send them an email. In that meeting or that email, you say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I just want to let you know, here's what I've been working on. Here is my plan, the chapter I'll have for you, or the milestone I'll hit by the end of the month. Here's what I need from you, or here are the questions I have for you. Or if you don't need anything, if you don't have any questions, like I'm just sending you this so that you can be updated on my progress. and you move on. It's a 10 to 15 minute meeting. Why you want to do this is because, number one, because they are the ones who approve whether or not you move forward. They can tell you like, oh, that literature review is solid enough. Don't worry about working on it anymore. Move on to your next chapter. Or your proposal is in pretty good shape. Go ahead and schedule your meeting with your committee. You may be thinking it's not good enough. You may be like, but what about this mistake and this mistake? And they're like, it's all good. Just move forward. A lot of you block your blessing because you're trying to judge your own work when it's not your signature that's going on the paperwork. So you meet with them to do that. Another reason why you want to meet with them is if you're struggling, they can help you. If you can tell them exactly what you've been working on and where you're getting stuck, they may have resources to help you. A lot of you are not clearly communicating to your chairs and you think they're supposed to know. You might be communicating more to yourself. It may feel real intense in your body, but when you go to talk to your chair, you're not saying 90% of what's going on the inside, right? An example may be it's like, oh, I don't know. I'm so overwhelmed with the literature review. I don't know if I should cite this person, or I'm getting stuck on how to say this. I don't know. And I wish my chair would tell me because this is their content area. But when you go to the meeting with them, or you go to ask them for help, you're like, yeah, I'm just so confused. I don't know where to start. And so then they give you generic advice like, oh, well, just keep reading or you'll figure it out. And then you leave that meeting or that conversation frustrated because you're like, they didn't even help me. They don't understand exactly what's going on. When you can practice courage and vulnerability and transparency and you say, hey, I've been working on this and this is how I've been writing it. I wrote this many drafts. I've been reading. I read these people, but it's just not clicking. Now they can give you more detailed advice about, oh, you can write it this way. Or let me give you an example paper that I wrote that might be helpful to you. That is why this is important. And the third reason, and this is especially for my friends who it's been a minute since you've been in the dissertation process, like you've been in a doctoral program and you're starting to get to the end of your clock, like that 10 years is right there and you're going to have to ask for an extension from the graduate school. You know who the graduate school is going to go to, or say you've just been MIA from the program for months. You know who the faculty are going to go to? Your chair. They're going to say, hey, what's going on with your advisee? If your chair does not have any information to operate from, then they're forced to make it up. And as humans, when we're forced to make things up or to assume, 9.9 times out of 10, we're going to say something negative. Our assumptions, the things that we make up is going to be negative. We're going to assume the worst. Oh, they're not into it, or they haven't been reading, or I haven't heard from them. I don't know what's going on with them. The monthly check-ins is a protection for you, and it's to make sure you get the support that you need. When someone is being annoying, like for those of you who are around little people, like little kids, think about a toddler who wants a cookie. They will not stop asking you. They're like, excuse me, hello, mama, hello, can I get the cookie? Can I get the cookie? And you like, wait a minute. 30 seconds goes by. They come back. You told me to wait. I waited. Can I get the cookie? Can I get the cookie? You give them the cookie so they'll leave you alone. The same would be true with your chair, your advisor. If you keep messaging them and you keep showing up with them regularly and you keep saying, hey, this is what's going on with me, they are more willing to show up and help you. Either because they're annoyed and they want you to leave them alone, or they're like, thank you for helping to make my job easier. Because I have so much going on, I need the reminders. So those are the 3 rules. Give me a 1 in a comment if that feels simple, if that feels doable. I'm going to go over what I've been talking about. So the 3 things that I see primarily as to why people get blocked in executing their dissertation goals is because you think you need motivation, when motivation is a lie. You're overwhelmed with the process. You're like, there's so many moving parts. I don't know where to start or keep going. And you've been ignoring your chair. The 3 rules that you want to follow is number 1, the scholar basics. You're going to drink at least 64 ounces of water. You are going to sleep or rest at least 7 hours a night. You're going to move your body for 10 minutes. You're going to journal for 10 minutes. And you're going to write a shitty paragraph every day. This is going to be the practice. That's number one. Number two, you're going to evaluate and create a plan every 7 days. That plan should say, here are the 3 things I'm committing to doing over the next 7 days. I'm going to do 3 days, 2 hours. I'm going to do each of these tasks. I'm going to put it on my calendar. The third rule is I'm going to meet with my chair at least once a month for at least 30 minutes to tell them what I've been working on and to ask any questions. If you follow this, you will, listen, I cannot explain to you how much progress that you will make. I told you about Tiffany in a 6-month dissertation. I'm thinking about Dr. Rashonda Breeden, who is a client, and my friend was over here rewatching the whole season, like the whole series of Grey's Anatomy. Her and her husband were taking weekend getaways, like almost every weekend. I would call her and be like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm in the bed. I'm like, when do you work on your dissertation? She's like, I do my 10 hours every week because that's all I need. And she did a participatory action research project with a whole town and was done in less than 9 months. I'm not telling you something that is like, oh, I just made up and it doesn't work. Hundreds of students have been using this to write consistently. I've helped over 50 people become doctor with these 3 rules. You can learn more about these 3 rules if you go sign up for the Institute. You can get it for 50% off. The Institute, the link is in my bio. So all you have to do is hit my picture at the top, go to the bio, click the link, and sign up. It's $50 a month. There are courses that walk you through what I explain and walks you through how to use it. Plus, we have weekly calls every Thursday and Sunday to make sure you're staying on track, to keep you accountable. And the community will be like, what you doing? How can we support you? Do you need to write? You want to sign up, $50 a month to write your dissertation in 10 hours or less, to be a doctor in 12 months or less. Y'all want to do that? Okay. Are there any questions or anything? Hearing you say this makes so much sense. Girl, they sweat it. We have nothing to do but be with them. Ooh, listen. I think that was my rant about chairs and being with advisees. Yes. It's okay. You can side-eye me. I have clients all the time who like, I'm going to ask for coaching even though I'm annoyed with you already and I don't want to ask for it, but I'm going to ask for it. And it's because I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell it to you like this, but it's coming from a place of love. I am not here to shame you. I'm not here for you to feel like shit about yourself. What I want for you is self-awareness. That's really what I'm fighting for. I want you to be aware of how do you operate, what works best for you, and to create systems in your life that works best for you. Stop looking at everybody else. Stop trying to be a people pleaser and prove yourself to those people in the program you don't even like. And 10 years from now, you won't even remember the people in your program. You won't even remember that faculty. You won't even think about them that want to get on your nerves. You won't even think about them 10 years from now. I just want you to skip past the 10 years of like frustration and stressed out and like thinking about what they're saying about you. Forget them. Okay. My favorite distraction, the weekly planning lets me have an actual plan so I don't get to procrastinating by planning because I have one weekly plan that tells me what to do. Yes, y'all, I still make a weekly plan. Where is it? It's over here somewhere. I still make one. It must be in the kitchen. It's just like a regular notebook that looks like this. And I just say, what are the things I'm committing to do? What are the 3 things I'm committing to doing in my business? I got 2 of them. So it's each, what am I doing for my research? What am I doing for my personal life? I like the number 3. It's just something that's very doable. And when I get to the end of the week, I'm like, look at me, I'm doing so much. Now, when you first start this, you're going to be like, is this really going to work? Now, people love to be like, you know, I saw your little plan, but I need something more extensive. I just got so much going on. I got so many demands on me. And I let people have it. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Most people who come into the program, they'll do everything but the planning for the first like month or 2. They're like, I don't need to do that. I have my own planning system. And I'm like, it's great. Because by the time we get to the end of that 2 months and I say, do you have 2 chapters written? Because my expectation is that you write a chapter a month. And so when we get to the end of 2 months and you don't have those 2 chapters written, I'm like, why? Let's walk through your average week. What's going on? And as we're walking through and I'm like, you had this time right here to write. Why didn't you? Oh, well, so-and-so wanted me to do. Okay. And then we talk about, why are you putting everybody else's priorities ahead of yours? Why is everybody else more important than you? Why is your friend relationship and love life that she keep having problems with more important than you becoming doctor? When I frame it to you in that way, then it's like, oh, you right. Yes. Go follow the plan. Make a plan, because the plan, I'm not telling you to do this plan in this way because I'm like, this is the only way to be productive. I'm asking you to make a simple plan that's easy to follow, because I need to get to the real reason as to why you're not showing up as the version you want to be in this dissertation process. And the only way that we can get to the root of it is for you to have something that's very simple to follow, and you find out why you can't follow the simple thing. Okay. What is the difference between the Institute and FYD? So, finish your dissertation traditionally was what the Institute is now. I have changed finish your dissertation to be more of a one-on-one program. So if you want one-on-one, like private weekly sessions, then you would join FYD, because that's $300 a month. If you want to meet with me, we meet every week for about 25 minutes, because trust me, that's all you need, friend. Because after those 25 minutes, you're going to want to go take a nap. You can ask the clients on here. If they still on here, you go find them and say, like, what is it like to coach with me one-on-one? You need a nap afterwards, so you only want to talk to me for 25 minutes. But we meet every week, and it is me giving you personalized assignments in those one-on-one meetings. And then you come back and we talk through that. The Institute is that we're doing that in a group format. Even if you sign up for the FYD and you get those one-on-one sessions, you'll also get access to the Institute. So all of that is included. But some people just are like, the community is keeping me accountable. The weekly calls are keeping me accountable. And I still show up and coach on those weekly calls, but you may prefer more private sessions. So let me know, Danielle, if you have any other questions about that. Makes sense. Said I would start my discussion chapter and didn't do anything today after the dentist. Too vague of a plan. Okay, some love. How do you feel about the dentist? Do you enjoy going to the dentist? I don't enjoy going to the dentist. Y'all, let me take a sip of water. I don't enjoy going to the dentist. Like, I need to be treated like a 5-year-old. I need my headphones. I prefer to be in the room with the stickers and the butterflies or superheroes, whatever they have. I'm like, listen, explain to me everything that you're going to do before you do it, because my anxiety can't do this. And after the dentist, I just need to go lay down somewhere because it's so much. Now, maybe the dentist is not that big of a deal for you. Maybe you can go and it's fine. But if it does cause any level of anxiety or stress, it makes sense then why you wouldn't want to come and start your discussion chapter. That's where I'm going with that. If you're doing anything, so maybe it's not the dentist for y'all. Maybe it's, you have to go to a family event. Hello.
Hi. I feel like I'm always watching your videos, especially when I'm procrastinating, but they're very helpful. And I just wanted to come and say hi. I'm Summer. I'm always on your video, your live. I thought also it'd be easier to kind of just get on and say, I went for a cleaning, so it wasn't as the negative feelings and stuff.
No, I
I'm also
on a cleaning. I'd be like,
yeah.
I know.
I just wanted to come on and say this because I think I'm in a very different place than a lot of other people watching, where, I just finished up my first draft of my literature review. I'm working on my discussion, and my supervisors are kind of planning, like who should we have examiners and like how that process should work. So it's fairly towards the end of it where by December I should be finished, but because I'm still so integrated in the process and still keeping myself, even while the finish line is so close, to be like, today I took the day off, like make sure you're back on it tomorrow. I'm feeling guilty, and telling myself that this is a form of PhD, interacting with you, like you coming up and you showing up, it kind of like makes us show up, and it doesn't matter at what stage. So it doesn't even have to necessarily, I feel like a lot of times it's like a lot of people are stuck in like maybe the earlier stages, the middle stage, or even if that's the end. But I feel like I'm in a different one, and it's still very helpful to have your insight, and whether it's your input or just seeing you really like passionate about helping us.
Yes. Listen, I'm trying to save y'all. Listen. What's this? you here. I'm like, I don't ever think anything is a coincidence. If you're
Hi, my friend just joined. I love that.
if you're comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
if we talk more about the discussion chapter.
Yeah. So my discussion chapter, essentially, I have so far put down like key findings for my discussion chapter. I think the rules that you gave are very applicable in the sense that I'm using them to a degree. I suck at like making sure, I'm drinking water and all the other, I guess the easier ones. But in terms of meeting with my advisors, they're so, I guess, dedicated now. We're meeting bi-weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and that's two of them. They're both like head of department and stuff. So if they can take the time with all the stuff that you said, while, like they're churning out papers, creating their own actual uh journal like own like
Yeah.
pages of groups. So I think with all that stuff that they have going on and they can make time for that, it makes me more motivated as well to be like to academics already taking out time and investing in it. And that's kind of my accountability. I just wrote that down when you mentioned that's I was like, oh, that is my form of accountability, essentially having those bi-weekly meetings. So I would say for the discussion chapter, I was lucky enough where I just today received feedback all day, and I think that's where the negativity, how you were saying, oh, the dentist, no, it's getting those, Professor Julie's comment on your literature review and it's multiple comments. I have to almost force myself not to go and look into them and be like, you know what, I'm going to do this tomorrow, or I'm going to do this all together when I can like ready to rip off the band-aid. But it's a lot more helpful when she commented after we had a conversation on
Mm-hmm.
Friday. So I was prepared for what was coming, but also my first supervisor had reviewed it. So in a sense, it was, the feedback was there. The second one was giving more feedback. And at that point, I was able to talk about my discussion. So they were able to help me navigate. So they're like, come up with what you're passionate about, your main findings, stick with three, and then go into bringing the golden thread back and then drawing that in. So I think it was easy for me to kind of, I'm very passionate with like critical analysis and critical lens, where they're like, it's not necessary for you to now have another, I guess, analysis here, just draw back, because I was going into that because you almost feel like, oh, this is a discussion, let's
Yeah.
open it up. And I'm like caring for our carers and getting very almost like, instead of thinking of the ethical considerations as ethical considerations for research ethics, I was like, let's discuss the ethics of caring for our carers and teacher education. And they were like, hold your horses. We understand. Let's first dissect between ethics and, but anyways, yeah. So
Let me, and here's, and for everyone, when you get to the discussion section or you're at that place, what I encourage folks to do is to just allow yourself to write. You have so many connections that you're making,
yeah,
so many things make sense in a way that they didn't make when you were writing a proposal or like the initial introduction to this project. It's clear, and you'll have a lot to say, and you'll get feedback like Summer's receiving around, we don't need all of that, we just need you to stick to the original plan. Because the issue is in the proposal phase, it's hard to write because you're like, I don't know what to write. When you get to the end, you're like, I have so much to say and so little space to say it within. So I just want to say that. The other part, would you mind giving me one of your findings? Just tell me about one of your findings.
yeah, sure. So my project is unique in the sense that I'm one of the only other PhD students in the UK. I was funded from the States. I'm originally from New York. So it was pre-pandemic, and it was essentially the UK government funded money towards preventing mental illness, I guess, in children because of the rise, and a lot of them committing suicide around the age of 14. So looking at primary school children and looking at interventions and early prevention. My focus is on teacher perception of mental health and movement. Essentially, the intervention is informing mental health through physical activity culture. So just like you're saying, any sort of movement. And I'm like looking at exploring teacher perceptions of mental health and movement in a unique industry and academic project. But either way, my research solely is looking at that and then seeing how that can impact their pedagogy and essentially impact the intervention and like how they're teaching it, right? So how they deliver it. Findings that I found. Something that I found, like one of the main findings was that teachers, their stories are embodied, and they tell. So obviously they're told through their bodies, but also they retain those feelings and emotions that they connect to like their past experiences and stuff. And while most teachers have now aligned to the dominant narratives of movement and mental health, kind of how you mentioned, even 10 minutes is good for you, there are counter narratives out there. So there are teachers that have very traumatic experiences with sport, PE, and movement.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, because they have that, it's hard for them to engage in such interventions, and it's hard for them to then impart the knowledge, that the dominant knowledge that we have. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I'm following you. So
Okay.
you said you can go down critical analysis. Give me your critical
So my
analysis.
critical analysis is this. Essentially, because I'm in this industry academic partnership, a lot of the times, and I feel like this is like one of those things where you're like, but who's on here? And it's anyone from industry. I feel like a lot of times they can want research by emoji. So where your research findings may not necessarily support them like 100%, there's obviously going to be a critical lens, and that lens is that this intervention is taking a whole school approach. They're saying that they're engaging teachers, students, head teachers, the larger community. However, the focus is on children's mental health, and my research is coming in, and I'm essentially stepping in and saying, but let's care about the carers. So like kind of what the UK is saying around doctors, how can they care for you if they don't care for themselves? It's saying that about the reason I feel like I can use that lens is because if you're using a whole school approach, which the World Health Organization has deemed as one of the most effective approaches, I feel like you're almost writing off that approach because of its efficacy, where you're not necessarily including or involving those teachers to the degree that the approach asks. So I feel like I'm bringing in the lens of looking at teachers, and while they're not and this is something that I don't have to go down the rabbit hole of, but it's my bioethics background that makes me think, if we're saying that we're caring for students, then we should look at the teachers, because we're using a whole school approach, not just for a checklist, but to like have effective impact. And when I say teachers in this scenario, teachers are the in the power dynamics, the powerful ones, as opposed to children who are vulnerable populations and are looked at like, let's improve their mental health easily. But it's like the people that are in the key position to improve their mental health, how can we focus on what they need and their needs?
Okay. So I'm going to be ridiculous. I call this, I'm being a ridiculous committee member.
Now go for it.
Okay. Why? I mean, they're here to do a job.
Yeah.
And they get that job. And I'm assuming a part of that are some benefits, and they have health care. Why do we need to care about them beyond that? Because we're bottom line are the kids. Why do we care about teachers and other caregivers?
Fair point. So one, I'm looking at Clendon and Kennelly when I'm looking at narratives, and narratives are embodied, and that's how we tell stories. And it's one of the strands of narrative research, which is now, growing, as you know. So in that sense, stories to live by are the stories that we like to live by, right? Like you mentioned identity. So I'm doing selves, identities, bodies. Those are stories to live by, essentially, right? So if teachers' stories to live by, for which they joined teaching, no longer is their story to live by, then it's going to start being their stories to leave by. And now we're looking at teachers. And the reason I'm saying this is, yes, that's fair. This is their job. However, they have new expectations that a lot of teachers didn't necessarily sign up for. We're talking about like post-pandemic and the mental health initiatives. So while they have these expectations, they're not being supported by higher up, and a lot of them have research proves their barriers are that they feel like they should focus on children's academic outcomes, and there's pressures from above. So if the school is now giving them these expectations that they should align to, should the school then not put process into place to take care of those children, right? So even if the intervention is supposed to be helping these children, it's still not happening if the teachers aren't effectively delivering them. And they can't deliver them when there's like the higher up, like the entire schools that are involved, like when the once again, so when the approach isn't being done effectively. So it's not meant to be let teachers have their autonomy and focus on them narrative. It's like it's all interconnected, and I guess when you start looking at the complexities of it, that's one.
Yeah. So let me make sure, let me say it back to you to make sure I'm on the same
Yeah.
page. Okay, you're taking this holistic approach when you're planning and rolling out these initiatives and interventions.
Yeah.
However, in this scenario, that practice, because while there's a lot of attention focused on the students, what about the teachers or the caregivers who are providing the information for the student? If they don't know how to effectively implement it for themselves, or or they don't understand it in general, then how do they teach students? Let me pause. That's a simplified version, but is that fair to say it that way?
Yes, yes, it is fair because essentially the knowledge is embodied, and their embodied knowledge is, if it doesn't align, then how can they teach it to students as is?
So I want you to think about, I often say I need everyone to write a basic, boring dissertation. What I mean by this would be a good example. Again, I'm going to tell it to you, not that I'm feeling this way, but I just need to tell you, like in general, when people are reading this, they don't care about alignment. They don't care about embodiment. They think that's a bunch of fluff and ridiculousness. Like, this is an academic setting and kids are coming here to learn, whatever, right? And so instead of trying to argue with people, because what I find, and I don't know if this is your case, I'm just using you as an example. What I find is that if you're not careful, you might get caught up in trying to prove to, whether it's your chairs, other faculties, people at conferences or whatnot, you can end up getting caught up and prove that, like, power dynamics are a real thing. It's institutionalized, like oppressive messaging is a real thing, that we need to focus on alignment and embodiment because people are getting caught up by the words. But instead, when you say you want students to do this thing, in order for the student to do the thing, the teacher has to understand it and be able to implement it. If the teacher can't understand it and implement it, then
Yeah.
that's what the student. How do we make sure that the teachers have what they need and the support that they need to be able to understand, implement, so that they can then teach the student? That's you saying the same thing, you're just using different language. You can go, let me back up. So that's one thing. The second thing is, if you just wrote a simple paragraph or two about that in the discussion, that is enough. You don't have to prove, because you made a very logical connection for the people. What I want you to do, though, is I don't want you to ignore how you said it to me.
Yeah.
You write all that out. You save it for a conference, a publication, or for speaking directly to teachers if you have that sort of access.
Yeah, I do. So that's really helpful, I guess, once again, because now I feel like we're back in, when I like speak to you, I feel like we're back in the research environment, right? So the way that I would say to you, I can go into embodiment and alignment and say like, this is what knowledge is and this is how it's constructed, etc., right? Without even dropping like ontology and epistemology. But to that degree, absolutely. When I'm in industry, I do get this pushback, similar to what you're saying, where they want, what's the practical thing? What's pragmatic? What does that mean that teachers have to do? And what's the training and what are the barriers, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be like, I have the key points that I've given to industry partners. And I think with my research, I'm focused on like the narrative lens and like going into in like depth about it, because yeah.
You. I'm just, here's the thing though, we can sometimes make the assumption that other faculty are on the same page.
Yeah, luckily my supervisors are, because when they're talking about, I think that I totally get that. I think, and I don't know if it's different here, like in the UK than it is in the US. I know a lot of times you say chair, we just say supervisor, stuff like that. Those are just little things. But here, my primary supervisor, her PhD was like embodiment, bodies, selves, identities. Now she's doing her own like autobiography, like I mentioned, journal article like thing. So very much the path that you're saying, you mentioned, do you want to get caught up in this path last time? So in that path, without even thinking, the people that, so your examiners, it's someone that your supervisors can choose, because she's very well versed in this, and I guess I'm, gaining some sort of understanding as well now, um, she would choose people that align with that, if that makes sense. So essentially, even just the last meeting, she actually told me to write this down, so I have it written here,
Mm-hmm.
where it was like, be able to define the words that you use. So like, be able to define terminology like body, selves, identities, narratives, embodiment, the body, because then it flows throughout, because it's there, it's given. And
Yeah.
that was really helpful, because I've been using these words throughout, but there's not a section that I use to like define the terminology.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to everyone whose life I just took up for like
Oh no,
my.
no, this is perfect because this is what we do on group calls. Right?
Okay.
You can do this. You can try to do this alone, but it's. I feel like it's easier when you have somebody to bounce off. And so I'm on the same page with you, which is what I
Yeah.
mean. Use the words.
Yeah.
It's that, well, what happens is I feel like people get lost when they go to write. They get lost with the through line of it's this simple. We have to help the teachers.
Yeah.
So help the students. But if you can remember that and you can write from that frame,
Yeah.
then it'll help you naturally define your terms and provide examples based on the data.
Okay.
That's why,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I trust that like your co-chairs, right, are going to make sure that the folks the examiners who are in the room, who have an understanding. We just also can't make an assumption
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
the word that they would use it in the same way or they understand it in the
Yeah.
same way.
No, you're right. I think this is a key point my supervisor hones in on, which is so what, and kind of looking at the big picture, which is I think a lot of what you did, where you were like, okay, so this is what you're saying, and distilling it down into like, what does that mean, right? Is that,
Yeah.
and you were saying, so what does that mean, as in like, in order for this to care for the students, you have to look to the teachers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think the whole like carers caring thing, I was working for like the BMA here for a while, which is the British Medical Association.
Mm-hmm.
And so my medical background kind of goes into that. So even though this is education, I have to kind of step away from that sometimes, but it's all interdisciplinary, you know?
Yeah, and it listen, everything is interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
I would argue with like that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
It's just I've just been so many times I've been shocked by, this person says we do similar research, but then we get into a conversation. I'm like, we don't use the same words, and you
Mm-hmm.
do it, but you don't do it. That's me being snobby, y'all. Like, but I'm like, you don't really make sure I explain. And academic writing is boring and basic and tedious because it does require you to do the definitions and a lot of examples. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my advice in terms of as you're writing this discussion. If you can, I love 3 findings. You stick to 3 findings and you stick to definitions and basic examples from your data. That
Mm-hmm.
like tying that to one thing in the literature.
Like
That's
what?
it.
Sorry?
So, right, if we take this finding,
Mm-hmm.
what my question would be to you is, what if the literature was a person, what would the literature say about
Yeah.
what is needed for students to like use these interventions, and how did that connect or is similar or different than the finding you just said about no, we need to focus on the teachers because the teachers have reported that they don't understand, they can't teach it. Yeah, does that make sense? Question: what would the literature say is needed?
Right. Right. Okay, so this is exactly it. In the discussion, while I had my findings, my supervisors were saying to bring in the theoretical knowledge and what the literature said. So it's a little, this is where this would be interesting to know what you would think about this. Essentially, as you notice, I said a lot of like the theoretical stuff, narratives, understanding people through stories, etc. But when it comes to discussion, and I'm saying understanding teachers is important, so then we can understand like their roles as the deliverers of this intervention. So in this point, it would be interesting because then I go back to the research to look at, what other qualitative research is out there where they looked at teachers. And there is qualitative research looking around teachers or barriers to interventions, but it's not necessarily in the same scope. So I think it's the original contribution, but it's the first of its kind. Yeah, to look at that gap where it's movement, mental health, whole school approach, and primary school teachers in the UK. So now going into the discussion chapter, I'm supposed to bring in the theoretical knowledge, right? That's where it's becoming a little interesting, where I'm trying not to fixate on narratives, but at the same time, like you said, give like action points. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna try to
I know.
maybe,
I confuse myself.
I'm gonna use I'll use my dissertation as an example
Yeah.
to see if I use a different example.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the identity development of Black women. Just how do you answer the question of who am I?
Mm-hmm.
The literature in general says, well, Black women, in order to have strong identity development, need to be in mentoring relationships with other Black women. That's what the literature says, right? Like if they do that, y'all good, right?
Sorry, if they what? You cut off.
So if they, I don't know what's happening, there's feedback. Let me try it this way. So if the literature is saying they need to be in mentoring relationships with other Black women, then they'll have a stronger sense of self and they'll feel connected to the institution.
Okay. Like through representation, maybe.
Say that again?
Through representation, maybe, or?
Yes, it's the fact that you're in a mentoring relationship with someone who shares the same gender and race. Yeah. That's what literature overall says. Yeah. I said, that's kind of challenging when you don't have other Black women at the institution. And just because you meet with another Black woman doesn't mean she can help you. That was my interpretation.
Yeah.
My data said, yeah, I did that, but there isn't a lot of Black women, and the Black women don't understand where I come from. And I find digital communities and/or television characters to be more effective mentors.
Oh wow, okay.
Right. So that's what my data said.
Yeah.
I have the literature. Your discussion chapter is you pointing out those three things.
Okay.
The literature said this, my data said this, but I think this. That's what the discussion chapter is. So when you bring it back in your topic, right? It's like, what did the literature say is needed? Did they even mention teachers, or is it only about the students? What did the teachers say in their narratives when you were collecting that through data collection? And what is your interpretation?
Yeah. Okay. That's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful to write, because I think a lot of time either I'm focusing on what my findings are, or now I can see what the literature said, what my findings are, like how that, if that matches up, and then my interpretations of it. So it doesn't have to match up, it's just be my interpretation. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. By the way, your was it your they say theses here, but that made me think, I think it was a TED Talk, and it was about Black women and just people of color, actually, in representation and how you see it more. But I don't know if you said it or if it was a TED Talk. Now I'm confusing everything. But it was essentially about I think it was a Black woman. She was in academia, and she said the way she got her PhD, and the way that this is how she gives advice to anyone, is look to, and this might be very controversial, but it was to look towards the white man, the old white man in power, and essentially getting him as your mentor to be like, to guide you into like the same positions. Like, but so it was a saying, how, where do you see yourself, who is in that position, and how can they help you? I think it was a TED Talk, and I can't remember because you mentioned your thing now, so it's like my mind.
Yeah.
But
no, it definitely was me, because I would be like,
yeah, exactly, right. But yeah, with the whole, especially like the intersectional feminism, et cetera, looking into these things. And I feel like I wouldn't be the first one to be like, look for a white, old, privileged man. But when I saw this, it was so like, oh, wow, this is interesting.
I get the strategy of why you would do it, but it could be dangerous and a slippery slope. So
I know. But yeah, it would be interesting to see. Anyway, just want to say thank you so much for having me, and also for everyone else listening for me like ranting for 5 hours, what feels like.
No, you're welcome. I know this is a great example, because it gets confusing about how to write the discussion section, because it's like there's so much I could say. But when you focus on, this is just a three-way conversation. The literature had one thing to say, My data says something and I think something, and I just need to write that in 2 or 3 paragraphs per finding, and that is your chapter.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. It's even easier to remember that way. My literature says, I say, this is what I think. That's really helpful. I was also, listening to your lives during the literature review process, so can't wait to look at that feedback.
And listen, you just answer what they put down as their
Yeah,
feedback and move on, right? Because there's so much you could say, and I'm sure if you got in a room with your 2 chairs and y'all could like just brainstorm, y'all would have a million
yeah,
ideas. But this is just about, okay, how do I finish this part of the process and move on, and we could do all those ideas later.
yeah. It's literally about just getting it done now. Getting
Mhm.
it, but it's so close. Anyway, thank you for all your support as well, and hopefully I'll see
Yes.
you
You.
soon. Bye.
Bye. Okay. I don't know. There we go. All right, y'all. I've been on here probably for over an hour at this point, but I hope that was helpful. If anyone else has any questions, please let me know. We can have a DM conversation. But if you are still here and you're not inside of the Institute, I'm really going to strongly encourage you to join the Institute. It is where I teach you how to have a simple writing routine that is easy to implement. I'm going to show you how to structure your days, how to structure your writing time, teach you how to plan, teach you how to take care of yourself, and so you can have the energy and the capacity to show up for the dissertation process. Once you do that, then we can do what I was just doing with Summer here and going back and forth. That's coaching. We do that every week. I'm happy to go through your project and be like, how can I help you? And then the community will make sure that you have the support that you need and people to write with. You can hit the link in my bio, click it, get it for 50% off. It's $50 a month. You get the courses. You even get access to the 30-day literature review workshop, and you get to join us for our calls. And then, hi, Dr. Petch. And you get that for $50. So hit the link. Let me know if you have questions. And I probably will be back here tomorrow and talking to y'all. But enjoy your Monday and be careful with chairs today. All right, y'all. Bye.